gets dark, I mean, your hours must really change. Nobody's looking at houses at 4:30 in the evening.
Oh, well, generally you will have a client who will suggest that. Mm-hmm. And usually one time out, they kind of realize, well, I can't really see a lot of the house in the dark, with flashlights, walking around in the mud, in the rain. Then they kind of, they adjust. Weekends get busier.
Yeah.
Trying to do it during the daylight hours. But again, if that's the only time they're available, that's the only time they're available. Mm-hmm. You do show it. But generally, right now, this 2-week period tends to be slow, but things still do happen. I mean, got a call last night. Someone needs to get a property on fast for a 1031 exchange. They've identified a property they want.
So is the holiday season, of course, the holidays they come pretty similar time each year, except for Hanukkah this year, very early. Very early. But as you start looking at things that buyers should know throughout the holiday season, what are some of the biggest, the biggest ideas that buyers need to hang on to?
Well, I think if you're a serious buyer and you've been looking and you're kind of frustrated, but you think you want to take off for the holidays, and a lot of buyers do that, I caution my buyers to still keep an eye out there, because if someone's on the market, and people do hit the market, believe it or not, this time of year, you've got a seller there that's serious. I mean, serious to sell, because most sellers are being told, don't put it on until after the holidays. Let's just hold off. Let's wait. But if you can't wait, like last night, they got identified a property. They've got an offer in it. It's contingent. They have so many days. They got to get on the market, and they're motivated to sell. Couple divorcing. They're like, slap that on.
Right.
So generally, if that house is on the market right now, that seller's so motivated, they want to get out. They want to sell. And it can be to your advantage.
Well, I would imagine that oftentimes that motivation doesn't have a lot to do with how much money they're going to get. Like in the case of a 1031 exchange, their big money is probably on the other side of the transaction.
Right. No, they see an opportunity down there, and they just want to roll the money over and into it as quick as possible. Absolutely. No, I mean, there's not as much inventory this year, so be realistic as a buyer. It doesn't mean that you're going to swoop in there and tell that seller, we'll take it off your hands for $100,000 less. I mean, the sellers aren't going to be probably that desperate, but you could probably get a better deal than you could a month ago. Because they've kept it on. And a lot of those people have been probably advised by their agent, let's take you off for the holidays, put you on fresh in the springtime, new listing, new eyes, new buyers. But if they're not taking it off, that's a pretty good indication they want it. They want to sell.
Eric, you mentioned new buyers. Are there new buyers that are coming out right now? I mean, is there more competition, less competition from that standpoint?
Well, over the holidays, generally for the buyers, probably a little less competition, a little more time for negotiating on a contract, like a normal contract would be. Like, let's go in, negotiate on price, then have our inspection, negotiate, not be up against another offer, multiple situation, having to pre-inspect and all. Generally, over the holidays, less competitions, chances are you can get in and then work that deal with that seller.
And so if you're working that deal with the seller, and of course you have these very different timelines, because it's not just the real estate agent. You have your mortgage lender and your title and escrow and all these pieces, and most people are taking some level of vacation. Are there pitfalls that people really need to be aware of?
Well, the big pitfall is to think we don't have vacations and we don't have a life. Because, and you need to factor that in, and your agent will. I mean, you do have to remember, maybe take a little longer inspection timeline, because there may not be as many inspectors around town available, because they are taking off, they're off going for the holidays. And do have that conversation with your lender, because definitely around the holidays, some things just don't get done as quickly. And going in there and saying, we need to close on this date in a normal time frame, your lender might actually say, well, that's happening, we have Christmas, we have New Year's, there's these many days the office is closed, we've got to factor that in. So
the underwriters are on vacation, the doctors are on, there's so many pieces to the puzzle.
But if you're at that point, you're negotiating that contract and you've had that conversation with people, the seller on the other end, they're going to realize that too. Again, they want to sell.
What, as you start to go through that process with all the people that are involved, who would be responsible for making sure that you can get your transaction done on time?
Who?
Yeah.
That would be you.
That would be me. I got to do it. I'm just curious, right?
We get the job in there. We get the contract negotiated on. We're going to make sure we get those inspections and everything. But at some point, we've got to trust in you, the lender, that you're going to pull your end of the weight too.
Right.
And that's going to come because chances are you've had a conversation with that lender.
But isn't that why it's so important to have a lot of upfront conversations so that you don't
Absolutely.
get ridiculous time for? I mean, we get, as a lender, you get pressured for time frames that are completely out of whack. We would like to close in 2 weeks because we want to close by the end of the year. Well, that's great, but you're negotiating a contract, and maybe you haven't heard, but there are some holidays coming up, and
and there's certain time frames we have to follow.
There
federal
just
guidelines.
are, yeah.
No, exactly. Yeah, maybe if you're all cash, but no. And I encourage them, and I do have that conversation with lenders, and I want up front. I say to them, let's find out if you are able to get closing costs, can you buy down your points? Let's find out how much money we can get the seller to pay for you. Mm-hmm. That's a real important conversation. Don't be trying to find them 6 p.m. Friday night when we're writing the offer. Right. Chances are they may not be available.
We have lives too, Eric.
Yeah, but you have cell phones, don't
you? That's a whole nother ball of wax, right?
But no, absolutely, you need that conversation up front with everybody. And like when I know we're getting close to maybe even getting a property, I'll go ahead and put phone calls out to inspectors just to see if they have time available if we're on a time crunch. Because you want to know that too. You don't want to just say suddenly, okay, we've got this offer and now we've got, just to get in, we have a 2-day turnaround timeline on an inspection period. Now you're scrambling to find an inspector. Well, you should have been calling 2 days ago when you were starting to negotiate and knowing, hey, we may have to put some really tight timelines on here to be able to get this deal.
Yeah, I mean, it could be like Black Friday for professionals, right? Everybody's trying to scramble to get it done quick.
Well, I'll be honest, on the holidays, I mean, I know a lot of inspectors, but they do take time off. And, they're not generally like we're tied to our clients and as a realtor, and we jump. The inspectors don't have that relationship. They're only going to see him that one time. So they block out that time
Jim's
for a holiday.
Jim's looking at you right now for mine. Like, I will jump. I will jump.
Well, then there's Jim. He'll jump.
And then there is Jim.
Well, yeah, I mean, we jump when the phone rings. We absolutely do.
And of course, through the holidays, I guess there's, it's a little bit more difficult to jump. But throughout the entire year, I mean, the real estate world is kind of, it's a different world. It changes rapidly.
It's constant change.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't like change, you shouldn't be in the industry, I would say.
Yeah.
Well, it's always changing.